All right, we are just about ready for the service as we celebrate the life of the late Ernest Banks, Mr. Cubs, Ernie Banks. The Reverend Shannon J. Kirshner will be officiating. Again, there will be a number of luminaries that will speak. We will have the coverage for you start to finish right here on CSN. You don't want to miss it because you're going to hear from Joe Torre. You're going to hear from Mayor Emanuel, Governor Rauner, Jesse Jackson, and many, many more. We will get you back out to the church in just a moment as they get ready to start that service. And you and I will be here at the end of the service as well as we look back on the life of Ernie Banks. Hard to believe that we will not see Mr. Cub at Wrigley Field anymore, but we do have one more chance today to celebrate his life. Let's take it out now to the Reverend Kirshner.
We are honored to provide sacred space for such a time as this one. For we have come here today to thank God for Ernie Banks, who was born into this world 84 years ago today, on January 31st, 1931. And who entered God's church triumphant on January 23rd, 2015. Hear now these words from Scripture. Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Come to me, Jesus said, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. If you feel so called, please join your hearts with me in prayer. O God, who gave us birth, you are ever more ready to hear than we are to pray. You know our needs before we ask. Show us now your grace, that as we face the mystery of death, we may see the light of eternity. Help us all to live as those who are prepared to die. And when our days here are ended, so that our living or dying, our life may be in you now and forever. Amen.
Each day I live, I want to be a day to give the best of me. I'm only one, but not alone. My finest day is yet unknown. I broke my heart for every gain, to taste the sweet. I face the pain, and I rise and fall, but through it all, this much remains. Give me one moment in time when I'm more than I thought I could be, when all of my dreams are a heartbeat away, and the answers are all up to me. Give me one moment in time when I'm racing with destiny, and then in that one moment of time, I will feel eternity. Yes. Ooh. when I'm more than I thought I could be, when all of my dreams are a heartbeat away, and the answers are all up to me. Give me one moment in time when I'm racing with destiny, and then in that one moment of time I will see, oh, I will see destiny. Yeah, you're a winner for a lifetime. If you seize that one moment in time, make it shine. Give me one moment in time when I'm more than I thought I could be, when all of my dreams are a heartbeat away, and answers, they're all up to me. Please give me one moment in time when I'm racing with destiny, and then in that one moment of time I will be, oh, I will be free. Free, I will be free.
Wow, that was beautiful. Hitting, good. Running, good. Attitude, very good. In 1953, baseball scout Hugh Wise typed these words into a report describing a 22-year-old Negro League baseball player named Ernest Banks. When asked on the scouting form how long it would be until Banks was ready for the major leagues, Wise succinctly stated, "Can play now." And while it was Mr. Wise's intent to describe Ernie Banks, the baseball player, he may as well have been describing Ernie Banks, the man, when he wrote in that very same report, quote, "No outstanding weaknesses." Now, Wise only saw Ernie Banks play 3 times that year, but he knew he found a special player and a special person. Later that summer, Ernie Banks debuted as a Cub and went on to play 2,528 games over 19 seasons, collect 2,583 hits, 1,636 RBIs, and of course, hit 512 home runs. And while those are incredible statistics, never in time have numbers fallen so far short in describing the true greatness of a baseball player. Perhaps more so than any player in history, Ernie Banks was known as much for his off-the-field demeanor as his on-the-field performance. Ernie was a model of decency and humility, and defined by the sunny, optimistic outlook he had on baseball and life. Ernie was, of course, known as Mr. Cub, but you don't get called Mr. Cub because you play in a lot of games or hit a lot of home runs. You become Mr. Cub because you love the game, the team, and the ballpark in a sincere and unique way. After he retired, Ernie was asked if he missed going to work, to which he famously replied, "Work? I've never worked a day in my life. I've always loved what I was doing and had a passion for it." And he took that positive attitude into every conversation with every person he ever met. Ernie was the most kind, sincere man that I have ever known. And despite his fame and high profile, he always had time for everyone. I personally had the good fortune of meeting Ernie several years before we were involved with the team. And the thing that sticks with me most is it was very difficult to get Ernie Banks to talk about himself. The fact is, he would say, "How are you today? What do you do for a living? Are you married? Do you?" And we all know this. And, you know, heaven forbid there were two single people in the room. "Why don't you two get married?" He had a mischievous twinkle in his eye when he would say those kind of things. But you know, in fact, people would frequently walk away from conversations with Ernie realizing they had spent 25 minutes talking about themselves, and baseball never even came up. Yeah, Ernie was warm, friendly. He truly cared about the people around him. You know, I talked to, there were thousands of people that came through here yesterday. I talked to dozens of them, and almost every single one had a story where Ernie had reached out and touched them in some small but very meaningful way. And it's powerful. And I think those of us who were close to Ernie, we all know that Ernie Banks is not Mr. Cub because we loved him. Ernie Banks is Mr. Cub because he loved us back. And as it turns out, Ernie became Mr. Cub through no more magic than just being himself. And the bond he created with this city and with Cub fans had no precedent in the history of sport, nor will it ever, ever be replicated. For everyone that knew Ernie, and particularly those of us who work at the Cubs, the thought of a summer at Wrigley Field without the smile of Ernie Banks, without the laugh of Ernie Banks, without the singing and sometimes dancing of Ernie Banks is just too sad to consider. But the pain of the loss will always be balanced by a smile that is only a memory away, and joy that will always be in our hearts, knowing that we met a truly great man. So as we gather today to pay our final respects to this good and great man, I speak for all fans when I say, Ernie, thank you. We love you. We already miss you. And while we will always miss you dearly, we also know that on a bright, sunny afternoon at Wrigley, as the Cubs take the field, you will be right there with us.
Good morning. I'm so honored to be here today on behalf of Major League Baseball and Commissioner Rob Manfred, and knowing that the former Commissioner Bud Selig was so fond of Ernie and was so proud of what Ernie Banks represented. And I'm here on behalf of myself. I was just very fortunate to be playing during the time that the great ones, and of course there are great ones today, but guys I admired as a kid, the bubblegum cards and stuff. My first 12 years in the big leagues were Ernie's last 12 years in the big leagues. And as a former player, I can testify that his talent was amazing, absolutely amazing. He was a shortstop. Hit 40-plus homers 5 times in 6 years. His durability and consistency made him a constant force and a 2-time MVP during the heyday of men like Henry Aaron, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson. That's pretty good company, pretty good neighborhood to live in. But the story of Ernie Banks does not revolve around the many accomplishments that made him a Hall of Famer. If his physical talents caught your eye, then it was his jubilant approach toward life that caught your heart. Ernie was one of the special few who earned universal respect and admiration from everyone with whom he played or played against. For 12 years, I had the good fortune of managing a young man named Derek Jeter. What I learned was that when your best player is willing to dive into the stands to get an out, he sets the tone for everyone else. That was Ernie Banks. In 1957, there were 4 pitchers that had the courage to knock him down. Don Drysdale, Bob Friend, Bob Perkey, and Jack Sanford. Each and every one of those times, he got up the next pitch and hit a home run. As Casey Stengel said, if you don't believe me, look it up. And I remember my first year in the big leagues, 1960. I was in the bullpen watching the game, and we were playing at County Stadium. And I know Henry may remember this. Warren Spahn was pitching, and he threw a screwball that looked like to Ernie, and Ernie popped up. It would be the last out of the inning, except one of the umpires had called timeout. Next pitch, you guessed it, out of the ballpark. For many years, Ernie and I shared a bond that we were both fortunate enough to be a part of baseball for a long time, and yet never having reached a World Series. After my Yankees teams filled that void for me, I often thought of Ernie when some of our accomplished veterans got to win for the first time. But with his relentless optimism, an optimism that personifies his life, we'd like to believe that we could teach this lesson to our youngsters. Ernie Banks was truly living proof that you don't have to wear a championship ring on your finger in order to be a pillar of baseball and a champion of life. Ernie Banks made the confines of Wrigley Field friendly. He made the Cubs lovable. And he was one of the pivotal people during a vital time in our history who made our great game worthy of being our national pastime. Mr. Cub leaves a grateful game behind. Let's play 2, my friend. May God bless you, your family, your friends, and all the great fans in your beloved Chicago and beyond.
Only Ernie Banks could have arranged to have his memorial service and his birthday on the same day. Liz, to the entire Banks family, on behalf of the city of Chicago, I want to thank you for sharing Ernie with our city and for allowing us to join you in saying goodbye. It's a great day for a ball game. Let's play 2. Was more than just a statement. It was an expression of faith. It defied adversity, and it defines our city. A teammate once said, when Ernie dies and the undertaker's finished, Ernie will rise up and say, nice job, buddy. That's who Ernie was. He put the friendly in the friendly confines. He always believed that tomorrow would be better than today. And that is why his spirit will never pass the city of Chicago. He remains the greatest Cubs player of all time. His accomplishments on the field will stand the test of time. His talent will be remembered for all time. More important than Ernie's statistics are the Ernie stories. And like Ernie, those stories get better with age. They all end the same way, that he was everything you had hoped he would be: generous and joyful, caring and compassionate, with a twinkle in his eye and a twirl of the cap. He took this city by storm when he came here in 1953, always ready to play two. He was never without that youthful smile. He was summer personified. He was Mr. Sunshine, Mr. Cub, and always Mr. Chicago. But to many throughout the city, he was just Ernie. We were his kind of town, and he was our kind of teammate, a humble hero and an eternal optimist. When he retired his Cubs jersey, he never took off the jersey of Team Chicago. And a whole new generation of Chicago kids who never saw him play came to know Ernie as a mentor who taught them how to play the game of life. Ernie did not just play America's pastime. He played a role in America's past. He played in the Negro Leagues before he played in the major leagues. Back then, road trips meant coming face-to-face with the Jim Crow laws, and he was often not allowed to stay in the same hotel or eat at the same restaurants as his teammates. Despite it all, Ernie just kept being Ernie. Through the years, the country and the city changed around him, but Ernie never changed. Not from the day he received his Cubs contract to the day he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama. Standing there in the White House, he held the bat that belonged to Jackie Robinson, and he handed it to America's first black president. It was the passing of a torch across generations, and Ernie Banks was the bridge. It may be winter right now in Chicago, but Ernie lived his life in perpetual sunshine of summer. You can close your eyes and say the name Ernie Banks, and I guarantee you three things come to mind. It's summer, the sun is shining, and Ernie is smiling. Those were the three constants of his character. When his statue was unveiled at the corner of Clark and Addison in 2008, Ernie said, "Long after I'm not here, I'll still be here." And then he pointed to Wrigley Field. From now on, whenever the wind changes direction and starts blowing towards the lake, we will know that Ernie is there giving the Cubs some extra magic. And we will say, "It's a beautiful day for a ball game. Let's play two." Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Liz. God bless.
Today, it's my honor to not mourn the death of Ernie Banks. It's to celebrate a life, a joyous life. And this is what he was all about. Ernie has been the cornerstone not only of the Chicago Cubs, but the city of Chicago. And those who have met Ernie, I think they still remember the joyous smile that Ernie had. And I remember that moment in 1958, 2 years after I'd signed a baseball contract to play with the Chicago Cubs minor league. I went to spring training because myself and a guy by the name of Lou Jackson We were two of the best ball players in the organization at the time. And when I first went to Mesa, Arizona, one of the first individuals came up to me, and I could still see it now with a smiling face, welcoming me to be a member of the organization. You've heard Sano sign a contract to play with the Chicago Cubs simply because Ernie was here. And I remember those times in spring training, Ernie and Tony Taylor taking me around, showing me the rope about playing the game of baseball. And from that moment, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about playing, about interacting with people. Not only him telling me about these things, but I was watching it. I was watching it. And I watched the time that he talked to people, enjoyed people, just really made friends with people. Anytime you met him in Chicago, many people have met Ernie here in Chicago. When Ernie walked up to you, as though he'd been knowing you for years, and he never hardly forgot a name. I had the opportunity to room with Ernie for about 2.5 months. After then, I had to get out of that room. After I found out what Juan Sporn thought, after I found out what Joey J thought, I'm naming some guys that, I was a young individual not knowing the pitchers in the league. And of course, after I got all the information I could get, I had to get a room by myself. Because there were times we didn't go to bed until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He was continued talking about, not about himself, never did talk about himself, talk about the pitchers, how they tried to get him out. You understand that? How they tried to get him out. But he was an individual we had great times together. And when I came to the Cubs, 2 years later, I came with the Cubs in 1959. And in Wrigley Field, he often talked about the sunshine, all the day games, you've heard it. Loved to play day games, loved it. And I guess 1966, when I moved to Chicago, and Ernie was on 82nd and Rose, and I was at 74 in Constance. And Ernie would carpool for a week, and I would carpool for a week. And there were many conversations that we had coming down Lakeshore Drive. Not only about the pitchers, not only about the players in the game of baseball, but just about life, just about life. Just talking, different things that happened, the current event. And he was a guy that I never did see him read a book. I never did see him read a book, but he knew about everything. He knew about everything. And I remember when we played the Cardinals, Torrey might remember this, and every time the Cardinals came in town, Bob Gibson was pitching that day. And Bob, he'd come out of the clubhouse, he mean already, And Ernie'd be around the batting cage and say, Billy gonna hit a home run off of you today. I say, Ernie, don't make him mean, man. But he was just a joy to be around. I see some of the teammates here from the '69 Cubs. They know, they experienced the time that we had. Ernie come to the ballpark and we'd be dragging, and he'd go out of the clubhouse and he says, it's a good day for two. We can hardly get through one. We were tired. But Ernie never did have a mean streak in his body, and I could tell you that. The guys would ask me, he said, is he always like this? When he go on the baseball field, he yabba, yabba, yabba. And they say, is he always like this? I say, from the moment he get up in the morning, it's late at night, he do the same thing. But as we grew and had a family, we spent a lot of time together. We would go to Mesa, Arizona, about 2.5 weeks before the season started. and we'll go down to the Buckhorn, which was in Apache Junction, to prepare ourselves for the coming season. Ernie and I would sit in this mineral water for like 45 minutes. We get out, get a good rub down. Then we go out and play golf. And at night, about 7 o'clock, because we knew it was going to be a 161 game season, we spent a lot of time with the family and just enjoying them. And we did this for several weeks. And then when baseball season started, we knew we had to prepare ourselves for the coming season. And as we did that, I see Joe, I see Jerry out there, and they grew up with my kids. Good to see you guys. Jan's not here, but it's good to see you. And I'm sorry I had to beat your butt that one day. But that's how we enjoyed each other. Ernie and I got together for so many times. We enjoyed the kids. We enjoyed everybody. And as Ernie would say, you know, all the time, we're going out at Wrigley Field, the most beautiful ballpark in the world. It could be raining, but Wrigley Field was still the best ballpark in the world. And the experience I had with Ernie, some of you have had a lot of experience with him, and we're going to remember this guy, because as it was said, you go out to Wrigley Field, the sun is shining bright, and you might see this guy walking out and saying, let's play two, because that's the way he was. And in closing, as I say, I would like to talk about this as a celebration, not as a moaning time, because he wouldn't like this. And happy birthday to you, Ernie. Today is your birthday. And I'm gonna leave this with you, and I know Ernie will stamp of approval. He will put his stamp of approval on this. The Cubs will play as a team, no, the Cubs will win as a team in 2015. I know he would like that.
Ernie would have loved to have played in front of this crowd. Wow. So, like a packed house in Wrigley Field. He enjoyed opening day because opening day meant there's going to be at least 35,000 fans. And Ernie would always want to perform well. He was just that type of ball player. I had the opportunity to room with Ernie the last couple of years he played in the big leagues. And as Billy said, Mr. Sunshine, let's play two, on the road. I put the footnote on Ernie. He was like AM and FM. He was like a radio. You couldn't turn him off. I mean, just exuberant all the time. Just wanting to go out there and play and put that Chicago Cub uniform on. And I had that opportunity to see his 500 home run here in Wrigley Field and his final home run, 512 in Wrigley Field. And rooming with an individual like Ernie Banks kind of rubbed off on me. I'm a young rookie. I mean, rookies and veteran players don't room together. That's just the way it was. Pitchers room together, outfielders room together, infielders room together. But I had that opportunity to room with Mr. Banks, Mr. Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub. And looking over the audience here, Hank Aaron's here, one of the superstars with the Atlanta Braves, Frank Robinson with Cincinnati, Joe Torre with St. Louis, and Bob Gibson, I don't think here, Reggie with the Yankees. And Ernie was unassuming. He didn't want the title of being a star. He wanted to be a teammate. A teammate. A player that went out there every day and tried to win. I joined the ball club here from the Phillies in 1966. First guy I met in the clubhouse, Ernie Banks. He welcomed me to the ball club. You are now a Chicago Cub. You put that uniform on and be proud of who represents the team, Mr. Wrigley. Go out there and play for the name on the front, not the name on the back, which is very important. He's going to be missed. Believe me, he's going to be missed. Especially on his birthday, incredible. What a man. He's going to be in my heart. I know he's in all the fans' hearts that are here. I have the opportunity to read a scripture, one of the most popular scriptures in the Bible, just like the most popular individual, Ernie Banks. So if you want to bow your head and pray, you can. We'll start off. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. The rod and thy staff be with me and comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me through the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you.
Well, I too came along in Chicago like Ferguson, Jenkins, Billy Williams. When you're a rookie, you get a chance to room with Ernie Banks. Unlike Billy Williams, he opted to move out. But in my case, I got traded to another city. Without getting into a lot of stories about Ernie, one thing I would like to share with you is that we did commute a great deal from the South Side to Wrigley Field as a player, and that was 4 of us. George Altman, I see you here today. You were one of those in the car with us as Ernie did the talking, and Billy and myself. So we came to Wrigley Field, and we were the guys from the South Side headed for Wrigley Field. I'm today to read from the New Testament, and I'm reading the 5th chapter of Matthew, verses 1 through 12. And when he saw the multitude, we're talking about Jesus, he went up into a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciple came unto him. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall attain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men shall revile you, persecute you, and say in all manners of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted by the prophets which went before you. Amen.
To the entire Banks family, God bless you. Our prayers are with you. I was very privileged, very blessed to have met Ernie several times over the years. I have never met anyone in my life with a more wonderful smile, with a bigger heart, or more inspirational words. He's what life is all about. He's a good man with a good heart. And the world is a better place because he was here, sharing his heart with all of us. You know, I was born near Wrigley Field. I was 13 years old in 1969. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. Ernie Banks at first, Billy Williams in left field. I'm a big Billy Williams fan. Ron Santo at third, Don Kessinger at short, Glenn Beckert at second, Randy Hundley behind the plate, Fergie Jenkins on the mound, Bill Hands, Kenny Holtzman. Heck of a rotation. Boy, that was the summer of dreams. I think the team won like 11 out of the first 12 games or something. I mean, it was a strong start. And I was personally totally convinced best team in baseball. Incredible. And what a wonderful summer. I'd rush home to watch the games on Channel 9 whenever I could. I snuck away, and we got to Wrigley Field a couple times. I didn't get there a whole lot, but I got there a little bit. Wow, what a summer. And then August, late August, September, oh, I tell you, I've never entirely gotten over it. I'm psychologically damaged. I still cannot watch a Mets game. I cannot watch a Mets game. Literally true. But you know what? Ernie, he always looked at the bright side. And he was just the eternal optimist, like we all should be. He was an inspiration, and he taught us by example. Taught all of us the right way to carry ourselves, the right way to treat others, the way to appreciate all the good little things that life brings us. He's just incredible inspiration that way. He knew every day was a great day for baseball. We'd never forget that. He was a trailblazer who knocked down barriers. He was a veteran who served our country, defended our freedom and our democracy with honor and dignity. He's a respected community leader. He was the greatest Chicago Cub of all time. But he was the inspiration. It was his heart that made him so special. He cared about others. He put others first all the time. He captured our hearts. He taught us what true joy looks like. While we mourn him here today, we're really here to celebrate. And as several have said, there's no doubt up in heaven, Mr. Cub is lacing on the cleats. He's asking St. Peter if we can play two today. God bless you, Ernie Banks.
Good morning. There's so many glad faces here today, from Minnie Minoso to the Hawk to Reggie Jackson, all of us here feeling something, having experienced something, wanting to say something, but we can't because of the length of the shortness of the program. I want all of you to get on your feet. Let's give Ernie a big send-off. On your feet. A big birthday celebration. On your feet. Put your hands together. For two. For the joy. For the thrill. Put your hands together. I mean, like you really mean it. Like Cubs in the World Series. Put your hands together. Put your hands, like you really, really, really mean it. Say thank you, Ernie. Happy birthday, Ernie. Say happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ernie Banks. It's also the 150th anniversary of the 13th Amendment to end slavery today. A few days ago, Ernie made his transition into immortality. We were shocked and pained and yet grateful. A flow of adjectives seeking to describe him, this human phenomenon, a source of pride, a bridge builder, healer, odds buster, dream maker, disarmed adversaries with optimism. He branded goodwill. He absorbed his pain and rejection, but he did not internalize it. He had a higher vision. On his journey, he processed pain with joy and faith and a powerful smile. We're not here today because Ernie died. We're here because he lived. So the writer says, smile though your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you. Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness. Although a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. That's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? Born January 31st, 1931, in the shadows of the Great Depression, the deeply segregated South, Dallas, Texas, against the odds, one of 12 children, poor but with rich talents. He was never given the option of a college or university, but God gave him a unique gift, baseball. He was a Chicago Cub experiment that worked. Jack Robinson broke the color line in 1947 with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Ernie Banks emerged with the Cubs 6 years later. Ernie Banks, the greatest Cub batter ever. The Banks to Baker second base combination was a big deal. But beyond the playing field, he wanted to be a batting coach and a manager in the front office. He never stopped groping and reaching for higher ground. He experienced segregation in Dallas and Chicago. 1 year before the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision, it was Ernie Banks. Before that was a Thurgood Marshall in our consciousness. Before Dr. King and Rosa Parks in '55, there was an Ernie Banks. Those of us behind the cotton curtain, the Deep South pulled for him and hope in every hit. He had an inner joy that allowed him to smile through pain. Sometimes the smile reflects happiness. The smiling faces can sometimes conceal what's deep within, healing our hurt. Ernie was more than a champion, he was a hero. Champions hit the time, the home runs, they ride on the people's shoulders, but in the case of a hero, the people ride on the hero's shoulders. We rode on Ernie's shoulders. He carried the weight of a social transformer, seemingly effortlessly. His joy came from internal resolution and confidence. He was convinced that hatred and racism were absolutely wrong. He used excellence and a smile as weapons. In the face of adversity, he always got better and never bitter. In part, that's what allowed him to rise to unparalleled heights in baseball, playing by the rules. Whether you are Japanese or South American, Latin American, African American, white American, baseball is democratized by its rules. On the field, no matter who you are, it's 60 feet from the pitcher's mound to home plate, 90 feet to the base. Ernie knew he was not born on third base. He was the product of a protest to get into the stadium and wear a uniform, which he wore proudly, his military and his Chicago Cub uniform. I once asked Ernie how he handled being thrown at sometimes, or calls he thought was unfair. He said, "Umpires call the balls, I hit the strikes." We are often shaped by our environment. Ernie helped shape his environment. He was not a thermometer that reflected the environment or the temperature. He was a thermostat that helped to control the temperature. Born in an environment that he could not control, it was full of poison smoke. Often people die from secondhand smoke because they become like the environment. He never internalized the smoke. He kept smiling and changing the environment. I saw him at his lowest and highest moments, it seems to me. The day that Billy hit the 500th home run, that was a big deal to him. He did not celebrate too much, but it was a big deal. I attended the Cub game the day when Ron Santos was being honored. I thought about the high moment of the 500th home run and then how close he was to Santos. On that day, he had two young white suburban youths with him. He had commissioned the painting that he wanted to give to Santos. He was excited and full of joy. He had his speech prepared. He was told that there was no room for him on the program. We stood in the customer relations office where there was a painting of him hung, and as I heard the announcer say that 20 minutes more airtime available, but there was no room for him. I saw a tear swell up in his eye. I watched him process the pain, anger, and hurt, but he could hardly conceal it. He walked across the street to McDonald's and purchased a sandwich. I said, "Ernie, we're going to get a statue erected in your memory." He said, "They will never do that." I said, "Yes, they will. I don't think the people really know. Appreciation is beyond what you really know." I called Mr. McDonough, who was very cooperative and expressed great interest in honoring Ernie in some big way. I then called Mike Noah, sports announcer, and he became a strong advocate. Public response was overwhelming. I then went to the Tribune shareholders meeting during the debate about the takeover and asked for the floor. And so we can agree on one thing: Ernie Banks should be memorialized with a statue, and they agreed. We had one for Brickhouse and Mary Carey. They agreed for one for Ernie. The happiest moment, standing there with Hank Aaron and Billy Williams and Fergie and Hundley and other teammates, when he pulled down the cover off the statue and saw his likeness, he felt fulfilled. The little boy came out of Ernie again. I'm so glad that in his lifetime, we honor the legend in his own time, not a legend in his own mind. Suffering breeds character. Character breeds faith. In the end, faith will prevail. He will live as long as we remember him. We will always cherish our memories of him. It is a great day for a ball game. Let's play two. Ernie has run his course. He's finished the fight. Ernie Banks, at the end of my innings, is a winner. May God rest his soul in peace.